Like I said, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for our Copilot use cases webinar for the operations department today. We've got the lovely Angela, a Copilot specialist who you would have seen before if you've attended any of our other Copilot webinars from this week or previously in the previous months. Angela's going to be showing some day in the life demos for the operations department today within Microsoft applications like Word and Excel, Outlook, etc. As you may have seen, I am recording this webinar, so don't worry if you did want to go back over anything. It will be emailed out to you at the end of this week. If you did have any questions as well, please just pop them in the chat and we will get back to you at the end of the session. Otherwise, Angela, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Vicky. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So this series is all around Copilot for Operations Department. This is the agenda that I'll be going through with you today. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the types of roles that might sit in an operations department and responsibilities that you might have, how you're spending a lot of time doing those tasks when you could be spending time working on those higher value works, and how does Copilot complement your day-to-day tasks, and how is it going to alleviate those mundane and admin tasks for you. Then we'll follow up with like a next call to action in terms of what to do next. If you're interested in Copilot, a couple of promotions running, and if we have time, we will open up for questions as well. So please drop it in the Q&A as Vicky has mentioned. So let's get straight into it as a bit of an overview of different types of roles that sits in operations. So it could be operations manager dealing with supply chain management, continuous improvement, risk assessments. The responsibilities are endless, and I would say that I have created quite a few demos to paint a day in a life in operations with the types of day-to-day roles that you do, and how is it going to help you as opposed to you having to do that manually, and as I mentioned, to give time back to you to focus on your priorities. So it is quite a short session today, so I do want to get through the demos as quickly as possible so you can see it in light. So let's get straight into it. So let's go straight into Excel. Disclaimer, I'm not an Excel whiz, and some of you on call may not be either. However, you might be using Excel. If anybody has joined my previous demos, I've got a little bit of a sweet tooth, so a lot of my demos are all around bakery goods and cupcakes, etc. So no surprise where this demo is all around a bakery organization. And what somebody in operations is going to do is they're going to open up their spreadsheet and they're going to see all the suppliers that they work with, and this spreadsheet is all around our delivery times, so what we expect the delivery all these supplies to be delivered to us, and what was the actual time that it was delivered, and it flags if they were delayed or not. So Copilot is integrated within all these applications. So I've clicked onto Copilot and I've basically asked Copilot to categorize these supply names and how many times have they been on time out of the 12 months, and put them in category order, X out of 12, based on column G, on time, yes or no. And it hasn't implemented it yet within the spreadsheet. On the right hand side, you can review it. As long as you're happy, yes, you can have a look at the formula. In this case, it's Python coding. So if anybody understands this, I applaud you. I don't understand it, but you can review that if you wish. Otherwise, you can click on to insert to a new sheet and it will create that table for you. So as you can see, there are a lot of suppliers that are being delayed with delivery. So I'm going to go a little bit further, and I'm basically asking Copilot to do some conditional formatting, basically highlighting the supply names that are not doing very well in delivery times in green, amber and red. So anything under 5 out of 12 would be highlighted in red, etc. And as you can see, there's nothing in green, because in green would have been it would have had to be 9 out of 12, but it paints a better picture. And there are quite a few supply names that are delayed in their delivery for all of our goods. So I want to dig a little bit deeper in terms of, well, what are we going to do about that? And as you can see, there is another tab at the bottom called Production Schedule. So I've clicked onto that. I'm still within the same spreadsheet. I'm just clicked onto another tab. And this time, I'm basically going to ask Copilot having a look at our production schedule, what suppliers were delivered late and has had an impact on our production line. So basically we had to push it to a later date, and give me the top 5. And as you can see, it gives you a little bit of a blurb as to what it's provided you. So you can read that. It says it's provided me the top 5. Most of them are in dairy category. That's been delayed the most, and it's lasted 19 hours delay, which means it's pushed to the next production shift. And as you can see, it's created me another sheet. It's highlighted the supply names, and the category are all under dairy. So we're not doing very well with our suppliers that are providing us dairy products. And it's obviously giving us providing delays in our production line as well, which could have an impact in our revenue after that. So we've starting to build a case on risk of customers being dissatisfied, etc. So I'm still within my Excel, and when you use Copilot in Excel, you have to click onto something called App Skills, which is what I've been using. This time I'm going to click onto Chat. Now, rather than having that seamless experience, I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to stay within my Excel spreadsheet. And I'm basically asking Copilot, I've linked a Word document with all of our backup suppliers. And I'm basically saying, are there any other dairy suppliers that we can potentially use? And any reason why we stopped using them as well, rather than me having to open up that lengthy document. And Copilot has come back saying, yes, there is one dairy supplier that you can use. The reason why you stopped using them was because they changed location, but they did reassure us that there won't be any delay with any of their deliveries, etc. So it seems to be like a positive experience, but we just happen to move away from them, but they could potentially be our backup. Let's go a little bit further. Now, before I play this video, I just want to tell you a little bit about agents. So far I've spoken to you about how Copilot works within a certain application like Excel. It can work within other applications like Outlook, Teams, PowerPoint, etc. Now, once you start to use those applications and using Copilot within those applications, you might feel like you want a little bit more, and that's when you turn to agents. And agents is basically creating your own Copilot in order to delegate a specific role for it. So for example, if you're constantly getting frequently asked questions that come in on your emails, and it's taking a lot of your time to just reply back with the same answers, you can get an agent to reply back on your behalf, for example, or draft you the email and you will review it and you just have to click send, for example. That's a delegated task, and that's basically an agent. And Microsoft has created out-of-the-box experiences, so things that are already made, so you don't always have to think from scratch, what can I create? And they created something called Analyst. An analyst is basically like an internal data scientist. So rather than Copilot just giving you an instant response, it's going to really give you more of a deeper analysis, and it will be more in depth as well, as opposed to just using Copilot in Excel and giving you, a brief overview of as to what you're asking. It will kind of give you like a full financial report. So what I've done in this one, hopefully you've read the prompt already, but I'm basically linking that spreadsheet that you've just seen plus our backup suppliers, so that Word document, and I'm basically saying, can you highlight any risk if we don't do anything? If we don't make any changes, what are the risks to just leaving business as it is? And then also, if we consider changing our dairy supplier to our new one, which could be the replacement called Dairy Movers, what would be the benefit of that? And I've clicked onto Analyst right there to show that we're using that agent, which is the out-of-the-box experience. If you don't click onto Analyst, it will still give you a response. It just might not be as in-depth as using a very specific agent, as I mentioned. Now, as I said, it's not going to give you an imminent response. It's basically going to tell you the reasoning process behind it, so you can expand on it, review the coding if you wish, as I said, and then just look at what it's doing before it gives you the answer. It might maybe come across some formulas and some errors behind those formulas, and then try to recode, etc., to give you the best response possible. So let it reason, and let's see what it comes back with. As you can see, it's finalizing. And if we scroll down, we can start to see Copilot has provided us a report, an overview of basically what I've asked, the performance summary. So only 40% of deliveries are actually on time. They've identified a couple of suppliers, which are mainly in the dairy industry, that are high risk due to the low rates of delivery. Cost exposure, total spend across all deliveries is significant, etc. So it's also based on how much we're spending on these supply chains. And if we continue scrolling down, it would then start to consider if you don't make any changes, what this can do. It can interrupt production time. If we do consider a new supplier, what's the benefit of that? Well, it's actually cheaper than the suppliers that we're using at the moment. The ETA is actually 1 day, as opposed to some of them were 19 hours delayed. So as you can see, it gives you a nice written report to justify why you should and shouldn't be doing something in order to help back up your reasoning. So analyst is a great place to start. Let's go a little bit further. Now, when you're in operations, most likely talking to different people. You're not just talking to people within your department, you're probably speaking to HR, procurement, legal. And in this case, we probably would want to do that, especially if we're looking to stop contracts with certain suppliers. What's the legality behind that? Are there any clauses within contracts to break contracts? And there is another out of the box experience called facilitator. So when you bring all these different roles, different departments onto a Teams call, you can turn on facilitator. And what that means is everybody will be talking in the room. You might have a set agenda. And when you have that set agenda in terms of we're going to be discussing certain incidences, clauses in contracts, next action items, in the chat window, everybody will be able to see what kind of decisions were made, what was discussed, any questions that still needs answering. Maybe we've kind of drifted away from our agenda, and the facilitator will bring us back to what we're supposed to be focusing on. And then under notes, everybody in the room will be able to see what Copilot is actually writing. So we can actually add more notes, override certain points, and it will also delegate tasks to make sure everybody is held accountable of what they need to do after the meeting as well. Because although you do have Copilot in Teams meetings, and you'll have like a static summary at the end of the meeting, that's just for yourself. Everybody will have separate summaries. Whereas if you turn facilitator on, everybody will have the exact same summary, and you'll be able to edit it to the likings of obviously what you've been discussed, what has been discussed. So yeah, making sure everybody's aligned and on the right page and following the agenda that was added into that Teams meeting. And that's facilitator. Next thing I'm going to talk about is RFPs. So I've kind of created a bit of a story behind this. So we've identified there's a couple of risks between certain suppliers that are always delayed in delivering our goods. And we've spoken to different departments in terms of how are we going to position, how are we going to provide a different supplier for our organization. Now we're going out for an RFP in order to see, are there any other potential suppliers that can help us? So these are the requirements that are needed. So I've created an RFP in terms of what our objectives are, what we need from them as well in terms of delivery time, pricing, etc. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is, yes, you're probably going to get a lot of responses back on email, etc. You, rather than having to look at them on an individual basis, and they could be pages and pages long, one RFP, you can link all of them onto your Copilot, which is what I've done. So I said, I'm running an RFP using that description, those requirements that I want, and can you compare it to the responses that I've received back and put it into a table format? So in this case, it's a lot easier, and you could even turn this into an agent. If you're constantly running RFPs, you can turn this into an agent, so you can Copilot will automatically provide you a summary rather than you having to keep asking Copilot to do it. But in this case, I've done it manually. So as you can see, if we scroll down, Copilot has provided us a very tidy table with what our requirements are and which supplier actually meets those requirements. And as you can see, the Dairy Limited is meeting most of the requirements, whereas the Unify Limited is partially meeting it, and why. Some of the information hasn't been provided, contract terms, etc. And then if we scroll down, it will give you a little bit of a blurb as to what that means. So yes, one of the suppliers strongly relates to the requirements that we want. The other one actually doesn't, and maybe there's a couple of gaps that needs filling. So maybe you can go back to that supplier so they can provide those answers, etc. So a really good way to compare responses against your requirements. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more inspiration, because I've only given you an idea, a flavour as to how Copilot can work in the operations department, there's something called Copilot Scenario Library, and this will basically give you a day in a life as somebody that works in operations. In this case, it would be conducting a business review. Some of them would be RFPs, continuous improvement, and how they're using certain applications, even what prompts they're using to guide you through how to use it in a day, as opposed to just being stuck on Teams, for example. You only use it in Teams. How am I going to use it in the other ones? Use the scenario library. And on the right hand side, hopefully you've seen there was a video that was playing, and it's basically an ebook to give you even more inspiration for certain scenarios. And there's even sample data on there, so you can test it out to see, are you happy with that outcome before you use it on your real data. Now, if you were interested in everything that you've seen today and what your next steps would be, I would say is to reach out to Cobweb or your account manager and see if they can run a readiness assessment for you to understand where do you sit in Copilot readiness. Is your organization ready to take on Copilot based on data governance and security? So they will run an assessment for you, and they will guide you through what may need to be done beforehand before giving you the license, or if you're just ready to implement it and adopt it, and what the next steps would be after that. And a really good time that you've joined is because there are many different promotions that are running at the moment up until the end of March. So up to 35% off. There's a new license called Copilot Business, which is actually fairly cheaper compared to the original Copilot license, exactly the same capabilities. So again, please reach out to Cobweb and they can guide you through which ones you're eligible for. But yeah, I hope you found that interesting. I'm going to pass the mic back to Vicky.
Thank you so much, Angela. What a great insight. I hope those of you who have joined today have found this helpful or informative with how Copilot could help you in your day-to-day. If anyone has any questions, please just pop them in the chat. But while we wait to see if any come through, we of course still have our sales departmental webinar tomorrow that Angela will be hosting tomorrow at 10 a.m. So I've sent the link in case anybody did want to sign up and have a look at that one as well. You might want to pass it on to some colleagues, maybe it might help them. So I'm just going to have a look. I don't think we've got any questions, Angela, which is a good thing. But if anybody has any more questions or queries, or like Angela said, wanted to have a look at our readiness assessment, then please just get in contact with your account manager at Cobweb. Otherwise, we will send the recording out to all of you tomorrow, and have a lovely rest of your day.